Three, two, one. What's happening, guys? This is Logan Robinson from Here the Spear, presented to you by NoleGameday.com. We are here live on a wonderful, fantastic Wednesday evening, and Florida State is still undefeated, now ranked number 4 in the country, getting a win at home against Virginia Tech. Kind of a little up and down game, but nonetheless, so Florida State took care of business and put the Hokies away. We're going to give our last thoughts on that win. We're going to talk Winston Wright. He's no longer with the football program. We're going to be discussing that and giving our thoughts. We're going to talk Johnny Wilson and an update that Mike Norvell gave us earlier this week. We're going to talk the latest AP poll rankings, a few moves in there across the board. We got a Florida State commitment of a 2026 kid way down the line, but we'll be discussing that just for a minute, and then we're going to talk practice observations. We've got Florida State versus Syracuse preview for you guys, and then at the very end, we're going to talk some score predictions. Before we get started, as always, you can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. If you're on YouTube right now, hit the like button. Make sure you're commenting. Give us some questions or topics you guys would like us to discuss, and we will most likely try to. But with me this evening is Dustin Lewis, our editor-in-chief at NoleGameday.com. And then up with me is Austin Veazey, our lead basketball writer and game preview writer for the 2023 football season. Gentlemen, how we doing? How we feeling?
It's great to be back, especially after that show that you guys did without me on Saturday. So I'm glad to once again be a part of this awesome crew.
Yeah, views were like 4 times what they usually were for an instant reaction. Without Dustin, I just knew. It was a good time.
It was wild. Comments were crazy. A lot of good engagement. We'll just have to reevaluate further on what we want to do with these instant reactions, VZ. I think we'll need to sit down and discuss that.
For sure.
Which actually, it might actually happen again this upcoming weekend. So.
The next 2 weekends, really.
Yeah, practically so.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll discuss. We'll make a game plan for it.
Dustin's missing out on instant reactions, which the instant reactions are probably a little bit more fun. Don't have any kind of script to go off with. It's just us discussing like we would be after a game anyway, sitting down. So I wouldn't blame D-Lou for feeling like he's missing out. But I had a good time with our instant reaction. If you guys haven't gone and listened to that, we recapped the Florida State win over Virginia Tech. VZ and I did last weekend, so you guys can just go watch that if you want to. But we've got quite a bit to discuss this evening. Let's go and jump into it, gentlemen, because we're already about 10 minutes late on the show. But let's talk Virginia Tech real quick. Last thoughts, mainly for Dustin here, since he wasn't here for the instant reaction show. D-Lou, what were your feelings like during the game? Kind of swing upwards like me and VZ were talking about, then kind of falling flat there in the second quarter, and then you started, you see the run game get going there, which we've talked about highly that this team needs to get going. What were your thoughts on that win?
Definitely an interesting one. Mike Norvell talked about all week going into the game against Virginia Tech that Florida State wanted to start fast, and we'd seen earlier this season, especially against Boston College and Clemson, but also you can factor in LSU as well. Florida State kind of had some slow starts in the first halves. And in this one, they just jumped all over the Hokies from the get-go, building that 22-0 lead. Johnny Wilson getting involved with his first 2 touchdown catches of the year. You saw that obscure 2-point conversion that Virginia native Brian Courtney was able to convert against the Hokies. And, it was just all clicking for Florida State. The defense forced 3 consecutive 3-and-outs to start the ball game. It's flying on all cylinders. And then you get to that second quarter, AZ makes that, one of the most athletic interception, probably the most athletic interception that I've ever seen live at a football game that gets called back for, a completely weak roughing the passer call on Byron Turner, where he was already going into his tackle to take down drones. And, watching it back on the replay a couple of times, I don't see the penalty there at all. Looked like it should have been a pick for Florida State. But so then, Florida State ends up getting the ball back, and they target Ja'Kai Douglas deep downfield. Clearly has a hand on his shoulder, no pass interference penalty. Seemed like the officiating started to get to Florida State a little bit there, and that kind of flipped the momentum for Virginia Tech. And they were able to come back with that swing, make it 22-10 going into the halftime. We talked about on the podcast last week, I've mentioned in particular the kick return team, or the kickoff coverage team, and also the punt coverage team, how good they had been to start the season. Of course, they have a blunder to start that third quarter. Virginia Tech returns the kickoff for a touchdown in Doak. And suddenly you're like, man, it's a 5-point game. It certainly didn't feel like it. Luckily, Florida State was able to come out there, and Trey Benson finally had that breakout performance that we've been looking for. The offensive line was able to create some holes. The wide receivers, especially Keon Coleman, did a really good job blocking downfield, and Florida State did enough in that second half to get the victory. But, I mean, all in all, I think it was pretty much what we were expecting. Definitely not the game of runs part, but me and Austin both had predicted a 21-point victory coming into this one. Ended up being 22. So, I mean, we were pretty much right there on the nose. And I've got to bring it up. Jared Verse, 2 sacks. I think I nailed that prediction as well.
I gave you your flowers on the instant reaction.
Yep.
I said you nailed it.
We did. Yep, we made sure to give you your credit as due deserved, that he did go off and we all needed those sacks to happen eventually. I mean, we were kind of pressing on it, but Jared Verse getting into his groove there is really good for Florida State. And you just wonder too, we already know the stat lines that he puts up outside of just a sack number, but I do wonder if he just kind of cracked off something there to where now we're going to see a really intriguing player with Jared Verse and getting to the quarterback more, because that's something Florida State really needs. And definitely going through the rest of the season, they would love to have him in the backfield more and causing havoc and getting these tackle for losses with the sacks. So it was really good to see Verse disrupting. I thought too, looking back on some of the film as well, Joshua Farmer had a good day. He was really disruptive, just doing what he does best and just getting through on the bull rush. And he's just got so much strength, and he's got such a strong base. You see it in practice every day, D-Lou, and I've seen it in camp multiple times, but his strength is just at a different level, one of the strongest on the team.
The defensive line in general was extremely physical in this game. I thought Florida State clearly won the battle at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. And, I mean, going over to the offensive line in the trenches, I don't think it was any surprise. It wasn't a coincidence that Florida State finally started to get that running game back on track with Robert Scott coming back into the lineup. And, we mentioned on the show last week as well, or at least I did, and wanted to keep Darius Washington out there despite having these guys get back into the lineup. They did. He had some reps on the left side, and then it eventually ended up settling in on that right side once Robert Scott got into the game. And we'll see if that's something that continues. But, having that core four of Robert Scott, Darius Washington, Maurice Smith, and Dimitri Emmanuel, and then, Casey Roddick ended up playing every snap at left guard in this game. If they can figure out that combination there and get some consistency going, and this is about the time last year that Trey Benson really started to hit that stride for the Seminoles, it'll be huge if they can keep the running game, the consistency going now week to week after this huge performance against Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I thought Darius Washington did a really good job out there. I don't have the PFF grades in front of me to back that up, but I just thought he did good things. I thought Florida State did some things offensively with their whole offense, just getting things spread out to not have things so muddled up in the run game. It just looked much cleaner and much smoother, and that's something we've been talking about for the last month, really. It's just kind of cleaning things up on the interior for that running game.
And we don't need the PFF grade for Darius Washington. He did get named the ACC's Offensive Lineman of the Week, so I think that says it all right there. And he didn't even start the game, or actually, I guess he did start the game.
Yeah, he did.
Tackle. But
just nice.
The versatile Darius Washington. I mean, you can move him all over that offensive line, and he'll continue to produce. And I mean, it says a lot. It's a guy that's been through a ton since he got to Florida State in 2019, and now to be this versatile chess piece that Alex Atkins and Mike Norvell can put anywhere, any given Saturday. That's huge for the developments up front over these past couple of years.
It's just nice to have reliability on guys, man. Just be able to, if you can rotate like that, it just goes to show a lot of good coaching on the back end. But having experience there that you can plug in there is huge for Florida State and just helps out a ton. And continuing to have fluidity on offense and continued drives. And that's something that Florida State, if you look in years past, really lacked in and lost a lot of their consecutive plays getting downfield. And, with Darius Washington, I gave him a hard time once he got in there early during his career at Florida State, but I've been really happy to see him improve and continue to improve. And he's turned out to be quite a good leader too for that O-line. A lot of teammates respect him. You can tell Coach Atkins, he put out a tweet earlier this week, just talking about, him saying, hey, Darius, you're playing Saturday. And he's like, all right, sounds good. Doesn't matter what position though on the offensive line. he's about that action and he's ready to get out there. And that's something that you just really like to see from Darius. You put him at center, you put him in the guard position, you put him at tackle. That's just something that he's a Swiss Army knife. And so really happy to see him get the accolade that he deserves.
It's an undervalued trait for sure. There's a lot of guys that say they can play inside outside, but there's few that can do it at the consistent level that Washington can, from position to position, left side to right side. Put them in at center if we have to for a little bit. I mean, that's a commodity in college football.
I'm hoping he stays in the lineup whenever everybody's fully healthy, because Robert Scott's still dealing with some things. Bless Harris was out last game. I'm hoping that even when Bless Harris is back and Robert Scott's fully healthy, he stays out there, because I think he's just too viable. And like you were mentioning the last couple of weeks, Dustin, he's just one of the best 5 offensive linemen, and you got to put your best guys out there at this point.
We didn't really talk about this a whole ton, VZ, but there's a comment here from Witt talking about Lawrence Toafili's run there, and then also his acrobatic moves to get to the end zone. It just goes to show, I mean, this kid is unbelievable with the way his balance is. He's done it numerous times before. We saw it at Clemson earlier in his career, and then now doing this against VT. That this kid is special. It's wild. I don't know what he's doing on the back end of things. I don't know what it is. It's a special trait to have for sure. I've never seen a player like this that utilizes other players of the opponent to find more yards or get into the end zone. It's incredible, but a really special athlete, and good for Lawrence Toafili having a nice day as well. But Florida State getting that running game going is massive, and we saw Trey Benson get over those 200 yards last time to do that was with Dalvin Cook. So he's in a really big spot there, being alongside one of the best to ever do it, if the best probably to do it. And Garnet and goal, Dalvin Cook. Yeah, literally. So, major props to Trey, but, Florida State continuously trying to get some holes open, which I think you saw better of against Virginia Tech. And that's what they're going to try to do going into this upcoming weekend as well.
And I thought it was really cool after the game. Trey Benson obviously got to speak to the media after that huge night. He actually got to break the rock as well. I don't know if you guys were able to mention that on the post-game reaction, but he told us during the course of that conversation that he had actually been texting with Dalvin Cook the last couple of weeks, and Dalvin had been letting him know that, he was about to get things heating up again on the ground, about to break out of that slump. And then, of course, he did it against Virginia Tech, and like you just said, Logan, the first 200-yard rusher for the program since Dalvin Cook did it himself 7 years ago. And it was more yards than Trey Benson had totaled in those first 4 games. I mean, a breakout performance, a career performance for Trey Benson. And you've got to hope, after a September where he struggled to get it going on the ground, after this, he'll be firing out of a cannon moving into the rest of October.
Yeah, and hopefully they'll keep playing some defenses that just that don't want to stop the run, because Virginia Tech seemingly had no interest in filling their gaps correctly, and their linebackers were constantly out of position. It was very interesting to see, but I was glad to see them get back on track, at least for one game. Hopefully we can keep it going this weekend against Syracuse. And just real quick, back to what's coming about LT. Those kind of plays where someone body surfs off someone to get a touchdown, supposed to be a once-in-a-lifetime play, and the fact we've seen LT do it twice in 3 years is kind of crazy.
I think we've got to call it a swag surf.
No, we don't. We do not.
I did overhear the swag surf playing
in the fourth quarter, I think.
They had to wait and make sure it was comfortable first.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Props to the DJ and allowing that to go through. Got to have a little swag surf throwback to a pretty traumatic time in Florida State history. For those in the stands, which we were, I do remember that, and what a time to be alive that was. But no black uniforms. I think that was the key there. No black unis. So that's what did it. I wanted to bring this up because I forgot to put this out on the docket, but there's just going to be some changes here coming soon to Doak Campbell Stadium. And if you're definitely a season ticket member, or you're just simply attending any games, but Florida State, Doak Campbell Stadium, Michael Alford have been doing a lot of work the last couple of years and putting down some renovations and planning ahead for what's going to be happening. But Florida State is going to be doing some things here soon. Everyone sitting in the main stand bleachers will be asked to select a new seat location for 2024. I think one thing, at least on Twitter, I was seeing is that the west home side, where a lot of boosters sit, actually some of my family members hold some seats there that have been holding on to for 30, 40 years. The west sideline structure will be removed entirely. Rather than the space sitting empty during the rebuild, we will bring in a limited number of temporary chair back seats for the season. One thing on Twitter I saw the most talked about was the 7,000 temporary seats that will be holding on one side of the football field, which is going to be definitely a different feel for Doak Campbell Stadium in 2024 of next year, which is going to get interesting. Hopefully we'll get some more clarification on that. Maybe we'll get Michael Alford to come on here, Florida State's athletic director, to kind of maybe give us a better rundown on that game plan, but certainly going to have a different feel to Doak Campbell Stadium next year, gentlemen.
Dude, that's interesting. I'm really curious to see exactly what it looks like next year, and especially because the west side's the home side, if I'm correct. So, it's going to be a little weird for there not to be fans behind the team, but at least on TV you see the visitor side. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what it looks like next year.
That's all you can really say about it. Hopefully they can get that construction done, and then whenever things reconvene in 2025, got a updated and very nice looking stadium to add on to the tradition that Doak Campbell Stadium already has.
And I'm also curious to see what it does to the noise factor, because Doak's a very loud stadium, and part of it's just because it feels so enclosed. Now when you're taking out its entire sideline structure, maybe it quiets things up in there for a little bit.
Yeah, they're going to be building down. I've seen some reviews and also some pictures made. What do you call it? Starts with R. Yeah, some rendering of some of those clubs at the bottom there. They're going to be building that, blowing that out, building some of those down below. And then if you guys have ever been to Jacksonville, the Jaguars Stadium, it's going to kind of have that club feel effect there. And I think one thing that Florida State is trying to do right now as we speak, and then trying to fix moving forward, is not have that same type of feel that the Champions Club has, where you're looking on TV or even at the game and it doesn't seem like anybody's up there sometimes. And it's very bare at some points. I know they want to fill out more seats in there and then maybe have more allowed, stand, like a viewing area type of deal. But that's something that they're going to have to be very careful with, and not blowing out that whole side of Doak Campbell Stadium, which has a heavy presence and boosters, ticket members, season long ticket members, and then you're having a kind of a quieter side of a stadium there. That's absolutely not what they want to do. So going to be interesting what they end up doing. Like a comment on here saying only at that 7,000 seats on the home side for the entire season. Shaking my head. I don't know. It doesn't seem too great in FSU's home field favor, but interested to see what kind of game plan they have involved. And, Michael Alford, he's done a lot of great things for not just the football program, but other sports across the school. So I'm sure they've got a good game plan ready, but definitely something worth noting, going into next season.
There's some skepticism and some questions about how things are going to go, but like you said, Logan, you got to remember that Michael Alford is coming from the Dallas Cowboys, and that was around whenever they were creating that massive new stadium in the NFL. So you've got to imagine that things are going to be done right at Florida State.
Yeah, and especially when you've got games next year at home against NC State, North Carolina, Clemson, Florida. Those are some pretty big games that'll normally draw some big crowds. You got to get up for those games.
And I wondered too about pricing. This could be a whole nother discussion, but there's a whole lot of different things that go into this. And I'm just glad I'm not a part of someone behind the scenes planning all this. So I'm just going to sit back and just talk about it and act like I know what I'm doing and what should happen. So some other news, some big news here, guys, that we definitely need to discuss. And it broke, I believe, over the weekend. Was it, Dustin? I believe
Sunday during the Celtics' first preseason game, right in the second quarter.
How brutal timing for Dustin here. But Winston Wright Jr., the West Virginia wide receiver transfer, is no longer with Florida State football's program. We talked with Mike Norvell during Monday's press conference. He wishes him the very best. I think there's some things where Winston Wright knew with Ja'Kai Douglas coming back, Ja'Kai Douglas was going to get that starting gig in the slot, and he was going to see limited playing time there. And I also do think, like we've discussed this whole entire time on the show, Winston Wright was still trying to get to that 100% tick. I just don't think he was getting there yet. And I think he's kind of evaluating what he wants to do career-wise. But it seemed like from both parties involved, this was a pretty a nice separation from one another. And Mike Norvell talking very highly of Winston Wright and kind of almost kind of getting a little emotional there talking about Winston Wright, talking about his rehab and how much work he's put into getting back there just onto the field, but then also being available to play week 1 against LSU and play earlier in the season. He's had a long road after that car accident and already having rehab from his first injury. A lot of things has gone into Winston Wright getting back available for Florida State, but I think at the end all be all, he just knew there was going to be a lot of playing time over Ja'Kai Douglas and an uprising star, a young star with Dustin Hill. But Winston Wright Jr. no longer with the Florida State football program.
It's a tough way for his chapter at Florida State to end, because we all remember whenever Wright was a part of that 4 different wide receiver transfers coming into Florida State 2 years ago, and he out of the bunch of the time, he was the one that we thought was probably going to make an immediate impact, the most proven out of that bunch. When you're thinking of Winston Wright, Johnny Wilson, Micah Pittman, and Deuce Spann. I mean, he had a ton of production at West Virginia. Was a freak athlete, not only as a receiver, but also an all-conference kick returner as well, and had scored multiple touchdowns in the return game. And then goes through a couple practices at Florida State, suffers that unfortunate injury in the car accident during spring break. And I mean, ever since then, it's just been extremely tough for Winston Wright. Working to get back. We saw him practicing last season, trying to get over that injury, wasn't able to get there and play for Florida State. Finally, after some more rehab, was able to get back on the field in the spring. And I mean, you could tell that Florida State was taking it slow, but we saw some flashes, continued to grow in the preseason, but I mean, just couldn't consistently get all the way back from, an extremely tough injury to recover from. It was good, really just to see him make his debut in Garnet and Gold against LSU. But unfortunately, like you said, Logan, with Ja'Kai Douglas coming back and Dustin Hill continuing to ramp up, it just looked like Winston Wright wasn't going to be playing a lot for Florida State on offense the remainder of the season. We saw it on Saturday. He didn't end up playing a snap on offense. Ja'Kai Douglas and Dustin Hill soaked up the majority of reps in the slot there. And then, Johnny Wilson actually got some time in the slot before he went down with that injury. So it seems like Florida State's probably going to take that route for the rest of the season, ride with Ja'Kai Douglas and Dustin Hill, who we did see get that 30-yard catch against Virginia Tech. But, you just hate to see it for the kid, because he came to Florida State with high intentions, and, it really just got taken out of his control.
Yeah, it sucks to see, man. We all had such high hopes for him, and, just sadly it didn't work out. I think this season he'd only played 29 snaps off the top of my head.
Yep.
And with him not playing this past game, is there maybe a potential he transfers somewhere else, saves his eligibility since he played in 4 games? Hopefully we can see him on the field again and be productive somewhere else. I'm sure everybody in that locker room loves that kid, and so hopefully it works out for the best for him.
Yeah, a lot of respect from his teammates there, and just what he was able to persevere over and get the rehab done and get out there. And I also do think, he's got to kind of now question, does he want to keep risking it? And I just wonder, too, health-wise, just overall health, not just football health and availability on the field, but, how much more can you do pressing-wise on the leg, and, to where it could be really a severe injury and it can be, lifelong lasting. And, I think that's something that his family, they sit down and figure out what they want to do. And of course, all of us want to see him out on the field more, but I'm just wondering, just health concerns wise, how much of a risk it is now to continue to do that. And definitely with taking on hits at it, it's football. You're going to get hit. And definitely as a wide receiver, you're extremely vulnerable at times. And it's just so risky. So super fun guy to cover, and didn't get to see a whole lot of time with him on the field, but just overall, just hearing from Mike Norvell, Ron Dugan's always getting emotional talking about him and how much work he's put in to get where he was and where he's at now. But here as a show, wishing him the very best to him and his family. His family able to meet with them a few times at a few practices, and good people. So wishing them the best, and definitely Winston.
He's a competitor, man. It wouldn't surprise me to see him explore his opportunities whenever the transfer portal window opens up on December 4th.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Johnny Wilson real quick. I just wanted to bring up what Mike Norvell said on Monday's press conference previewing Syracuse. He said that they're going to be monitoring Johnny Wilson, Florida State star wide receiver. He said that Johnny was feeling better on Sunday, which is a good sign. But, there's some things here where, do you really need to risk Johnny Wilson going into this game on Saturday? I'm getting so confused now. I'm all over the place with NFL. Sunday, Monday, when the hell are the games going on? But yeah, Saturday when Florida State faces Syracuse, do you really risk Johnny Wilson going in there whenever you've seen production out of some of these other wide receivers? Is it worth the risk of your wide receiver 1B?
He may be one of those like break glass in case of emergency kind of things.
Yeah,
like where they keep him active, they keep him dressed up, or keep him on the sidelines just in case you need like a red zone touchdown or whatever. I'd actually prefer him not to play and give these other receivers a chance to get comfortable in the system, more importantly, get Jordan Travis used to these other receivers, because he's only strictly thrown to Keon and Johnny so far. So if he can get used to the Destin Hills and get the timing back with Ja'Kai Douglas, because a little bit off on Saturday, if he can get used to these guys, then you add Johnny Wilson back in, just makes the offense more dangerous.
And with Kentron, I know you're probably about to say it, D-Lou, but Kentron too, getting into the flow of things, getting to see him on Saturday, which was great. Good to see him also being physical as a blocker. But too, they're going to ramp up some more production from Kentron, who was the king of the spring. King of the spring is making his comeback fully. And so you add that in, and you're like, okay, I think we can allow you to sit on the sidelines for a game. Johnny, rest up. It looked like a nasty hit from both the top and bottom, both parts of the body getting affected there and the hits. So I don't fully know what the injury is, but just rest it a little bit. There's some guys that could earn some more playing time, and also Kentron get some of that rust out and get going.
It was hard to tell what happened on Saturday. It looked like from one angle, his left leg kind of got bent up under him a little bit. And then from the other angle, he kind of took a little bit of a hit to the head. And, I'm not 100% certain, but I kind of lean towards it maybe more being a concussion, especially since they had him walk off to a locker room. I figure if it was some type of leg injury, they'd probably just cart him that distance. But regardless, I don't really want to see Johnny Wilson play in this game unless he's 100%. You think about next week, Duke is bringing a really tough defense into Tallahassee that, has pretty much held every team they've played this season under 20 points, except for Notre Dame. And even that took some crazy plays at the end, that 4th and 18 by Sam Hartman to even get that to happen. So, they've been productive throughout the year. You're going to need your offense to be working at 100% whenever the Blue Devils show up for that Saturday night showdown. So, like I said, unless Johnny Wilson's full go and all the way back from whatever he's dealing with from Saturday, I think you play it safe here. Rely on your guys like Keon Coleman, like you said, Logan Kentron. I think he's ramping up and getting back closer to 100%. Ja'Kai Douglas is going to have another week under his belt. You still got Darren Williamson. Destin Hill is getting better week by week. So Deuce Spann is back. You've got enough weapons in that wide receiving core to get by a Syracuse team that I think Florida State should be able to handle if they go into this game focused like we saw last week.
Yeah, no reason to risk it if you don't need to. Absolutely not whatsoever. Definitely with Duke coming in town, like you were saying, Dustin, physical defense. Florida State can't get their run game clicking, then you know what they were able to do and get it going against Clemson. You're just going to throw those fade shots to Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson down the sidelines. So if there's any kind of evacuation route you've got to go, then you'd rather have a 100% Johnny Wilson for that matchup next weekend, which we learned earlier this week will be a nighttime kickoff, either 7:30 or 8 o'clock. I'm hoping for 7:30. I don't really want 8 p.m. ACC network, but you know what? I just get a good feeling that that's what they're going to do, and they're going to screw us a little bit there and have some ACC network action.
I'd be shocked. I mean, the other game is Miami and Clemson. You're gonna give up the top 25 matchup for that? Come on, man.
It's the ACC. It's the ACC. Think about it. We've had a lot of question marks about this conference, and they've screwed us multiple times before. So
it won't be up to them. ESPN's going to be pulling that game. Sorry.
I hope they do a good job of doing that. There was a question in here about Jaheim Bell and also Tatum Bethune. I guess we can kind of mix in practice observations here with this, Dustin, but didn't get to see Tatum Bethune. I showed VZ, we were talking about it, that showed that he got 1 rep
on special teams.
Yeah, on special teams at PFF, but that just doesn't seem right.
Yeah, I don't know what was.
Why in the world would he, if he's not fully 100%? Oh, screw it. Here you go. Here's a kickoff return or.
I think Mike Norvell said on Monday that he ended up getting 7 snaps on offense, was pretty banged up throughout the week, and they didn't even know if he was going to be able to suit up, and just kind of said it was a testament to Jaheim for being able to prepare himself to be able to get out there at all for the Seminoles. And same thing for Tatum Bethune. Mike Norvell said that he's been pretty banged up ever since that Clemson week, and they were just kind of playing it a little bit safe with him against Virginia Tech, kind of limited him to mostly special teams reps against the Hokies. And it seems like both of these guys are probably going to be back closer to their normal selves this weekend. I mean, Jaheim Bell had 2 very nice practices, especially yesterday. I mean, was just making plays all over the field, dicing up guys in one-on-ones, coming back in 7-on-7, getting some catches behind the defense. Then you had Tatum Bethune. I mean, I thought, for a guy that Mike Norvell said was pretty banged up, I mean, he didn't look like it to me. He was still being extremely physical in the running game, coming up, popping some running backs, ended up coming away with an interception today in the end zone off a pass that DJ Lundy deflected up into the air. So both of them look like they should be good to produce more on Saturday.
That's a good sign. That is definitely a good sign for Florida State. Tatum Bethune just brings such a good presence to that defense overall and the run game as well. So just having that experience is big for Adam Fuller's defense. Let's jump into some AP poll rankings. Florida State moving up to number 4 in the country. Georgia at number 1, Michigan number 2, Ohio State number 3, Florida State number 4, Oklahoma rising 7 spots to number 5, Penn State 6, Washington hanging out at 7, Oregon hanging out at 8, Texas drops 6 spots to number 9, and then at number 10 is Lincoln Riley and the Trojans and USC. Big all rise there for Brent Venables, though. Florida State facing them in the bowl game last year. We saw the signs of it, gentlemen. I think I don't know who I was talking. Maybe it was UVZ, someone that I was like, man, Brent Venables, you get an offense with him, you know what he can do on defense. But good for Brent. I like Brent. Going through that media week we had there in Orlando, D-Lou, I really did become a pretty big fan of Brent Venables. Really nice, easy to talk to, and showed a ton of praise to Mike Norvell and the program that he's doing. And, shout out to him getting the big win in the Red River rivalry. That was a phenomenal game to watch.
Oklahoma is the team I'm looking at this week in that top 10, Logan, for the exact same reason that you said so. I mean, Florida State, they didn't get a ton of credit last season in that Cheez-It Bowl, playing against 7-5. Oklahoma having to come back from the double-digit deficit to win by a field goal in the fourth quarter. But, I mean, look at them now. Oklahoma, a lot of those same pieces from last year have come back for Brent Venables' second year, including quarterback Dylan Gabriel, the former UCF transfer. What do we watch on the screen right now?
Oh, I'm looking at you. Oopsies.
What is this? But
that's what you look like. Are you scared?
But anyway,
I am.
I mean, that just showed us some shades of what was to come this year. And I think that should even boost up that win that Florida State had in the Cheez-It Bowl even more.
I was so happy when Brent Venables left Clemson. I'm glad he's having his own success outside of the ACC. It's good to see. It's good to see good people winning. Like you said, Brent Venables is one of those people. I do have to make a complaint with AP Top 25. If we're going to have Ohio State third, for beating Notre Dame. Why in the hell is Louisville 14th?
They did
Like,
move up 11 spots. So.
11.
Congrats, but
They
if
are
we're just comparing
yeah.
resumes, they've got the same resume. They've only beaten one team, and it's Notre Dame.
They are rising people by a big amounts, but when Florida State beats LSU, though, wow, just a couple spots. Here you go. Here you have it. But man, I mean, 11 spots there. Oklahoma 7.
Like I feel bad for Louisville.
Didn't take them until the last second either.
They're behind 3 teams that already have a loss.
Let's go down to the bottom real quick.
Neither 24 nor 25 need to be in the top 25.
I can't believe Miami stayed in.
How does Kentucky fall 4 spots after losing by 40? Like, what are we doing?
AP polls nuts. I'm just hoping, though, and here in a few weeks when the college football playoff comes out, that we're also not going to be feeling the same way. I'm sure we will. There will be some griping, or maybe there'll be some good things. But, the AP poll is really hard to just really rely on for credibility at this point, and just the way they do some of these rankings. But incredible game there for Miami and literally Georgia Tech. Of all people, And I don't know who posted this. Maybe it was in our Discord or something, but someone was saying, Georgia Tech could pull off some hilarious stuff. And it was the night before. And then so be it. I'm like, all right, this game's over. Almost about to turn it off. They're going to take a knee, right? They don't take the knee. What are we doing here? Not even taking the knee. Don't want to put the game away. And you could just feel it in your head. You're like, no way. Because every FSU fan is just hoping for the worst. They're like, strip that friggin' ball. Strip the ball. And sure enough, it gets popped out. Yes. The arms down, elbows down. But first off, you just don't put yourself in that position to allow a fumble. But it's just absolutely hilarious. You just knew that at that point, Georgia Tech was going to win that game. They're going to recover the ball. It only took a couple plays, and boom, it goes viral. And, Mario Cristobal should be, and that whole entire staff should have a drug test waiting for them on Sunday morning at their desks.
The crazy thing is, so I tweeted like midway through the first quarter, like, this is an ugly game. It was 0-0. Like nobody was no offense was doing anything. I think at halftime it was 3-0. I'm like, why am I watching this game? I'm exhausted. I'm just gonna go to bed. Mm-hmm. Wake up the next morning, 9 a.m. Oh, wow. And I'm like, wait, Miami lost to Georgia Tech? That's funny. And everyone's like, no, you need to go watch it. And I watched like, that is unbelievable. How can you be that idiotic? Like that was my first thought was, how do you be that stupid in that scenario?
I wish I could.
If you're up 20, fine, but you're up 1 score. Take a knee and go to the locker room. What are you doing?
I wish I could pull it up, but YouTube would give us a copyright strike, and we wouldn't be able to plug these embeds into our articles. But hilarious! I've never seen nobody's ever seen anything like that. You just can't make it up. Just whenever Miami's undefeated, they're on a rise here, getting a lot of momentum here, and we're hoping Florida State and Miami, that could be a college game day experience in Tallahassee. Like, okay. That's fine. Keep winning. And then also helps too, Florida State on their resume as they get into this college football playoff rankings, and then they just blow it.
It was funny because before the FSU game, our intern Robert, he absolutely hates Miami, and he was talking to me. He was talking to me about the game, and he's like, "Man, I really think Georgia Tech could pull the upset." I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it's Georgia Tech. They lost to Bowling Green like a week or two ago. So I wasn't very confident. I had the game on that final drive, and it got to that third down play, and there was under 40 seconds left. Georgia Tech didn't have a timeout. I'm like, all right, Miami's just going to take a knee. I flipped over to the USC Arizona game, and I'm watching that for a couple minutes, and I look at my phone, and I get the notification about the touchdown. So I flip it back, and Georgia Tech had scored an all-time coaching blunder from Miami. And then after that, it was crazy to see the fan meltdown, the beat writers going at Mario. I mean, you could just tell there were some people that were waiting on that moment.
And which we're 6 weeks in to the season, and we already have the most outrageous circle of sucks since Miami of Florida lost to Georgia Tech, who lost to Bowling Green, who lost to Miami of Ohio, who lost to Miami of Florida. What?
It's phenomenal. It really is. And just looking at Florida's game, too, it's just the most boring offense I've ever seen in my life. And things aren't looking great there in Gainesville. as well. I think it's going to be a different story than the last time you and I were there, D-Lou, in Gainesville. Just from what we've seen in play so far, unless Florida really switches some things up, it is pretty easy to tell what they're running on offense. And, is focus too is a big thing, but, Florida's in an interesting spot as well, at least keeping it in state.
But they got the revenge against Vandy. That's big.
There you go. There you have it. And Florida State being the only
Barely
undefeated team in the state of Florida. So shout out to the Noles. Speaking of shout out to the Noles, way down the line here in 2026, but welcome to recruiting and welcome to being a good team. A lot of players want to now come to Tallahassee, and this one is going to be a 2026 commit. Darrell Bell, an athlete, his position at that, most likely going to be a DB safety. You were saying D-Lou in the production meeting, but he had some offers here from Louisville, still holds them from Florida Atlantic, Charlotte, FAMU, Bethune-Cookman. I know long ways away, Dustin, but Florida State and Mike Norvell grabbing a 2026 commit. I feel like now it's at this point where we are getting older and older. Dustin, you're old. VZ, you're old, and I'm still kind of young, but I'm starting to get to this point where I just don't want to know the ages. I'm fine with seeing the 2026 stuff and whatever, but I don't want to know what their ages are.
Even seeing like the Tribe 26 and the Tribe 27, it just kind of freaks me out. Actually, seeing that on paper, but Darrell Bell, an athlete coming out of South Florida. Seems like he's probably going to project to be a safety at the next level as of now. I mean, you never really know, over 2 years to go in his high school career. But, I mean, at least on Huddle, very good instincts, athlete, physical hitter. Looks very good for someone playing down there in that tough competition in South Florida, someone who's only a sophomore at this point in his career and joins Devin Carter, 4-star legacy commit in that 2026 class early on. At this stage of someone's recruitment, I don't think Florida State would be taking a commitment just to take commitment. I think they see something in this kid.
Okay. Early. I like it. Florida State usually does a pretty decent job of evaluating well ahead of time, and these kids develop. Look at Luke Kromenhoek, a kid that has gotten better and better and better. But
But not even just Luke. I mean, Cam Davis has been committed to Florida State for over 2 years. You think about Camden Fryer, he's been in the boat for a long time. Kromenhoek, but then you've got CJ Hurd, who was committed for over a year, and I mean he's not committed to Florida State anymore. But at the time, they had also gotten Jordan Pride's verbal commitment. Whenever I believe it was either right after his sophomore year or early in his junior year, but it had to be sophomore year. So they got a commit from him a while out. So, I mean, Florida State's coaching staff, they found a way to not only be productive in the present, but they're also getting these future classes already prepared, getting some building blocks going, establishing a foundation. And I think having that kind of scouting outlook is huge for the Seminoles.
I obviously should have not made any kind of age comparisons in here. We're getting ripped in the comments. We still are pretty young. Also, I need to give a shout out to Gilly over here. She's absolutely enjoying our episode here. Seems like we're doing a good job of entertaining her. She's just passed out on her back on the bed.
Same way, but she's somewhere else this time, sadly.
Dustin's full screen for no reason. There you go. There's a good view of Dustin. He looks great.
Glamour shot.
Yep. Make sure you're ready at all times. You never know what's coming your way. But yeah, let's start jumping into the Syracuse preview, gentlemen. And then we're going to give our score predictions at the end. But Florida State going to be taking on Syracuse at noon at Doak Campbell Stadium. You guys liking the nooners? You glad to be done around like 5 o'clock and be done for the day? Or do you want to go like 8 p.m. kickoff and then be done at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning?
I hate noon games. Noon games are the worst.
Especially when you've had 3 noon games in your first 6 of the season. I mean, it's getting a little old at this point. I like sleeping in a little bit on my Saturday. 3:30 is perfect. I mean, I love a 7:30, 8 o'clock. I know we get home late after the game, but 3:30 last week I thought was great. I was able – well, actually, you know what?
You get Whataburger on the way home?
No, because
bet-
the line was absolutely insane because it was family weekend. I was about to say actually 3:30 games suck because whenever I try to go home, the traffic was
See, there you go.
just awful.
now they suck because of
I
food.
mean,
Give me a 10 p.m. kickoff.
Forgot to mention this too earlier, and I can't talk highly into injuries and such, but I saw a comment on here from Witt talking about Brock Limb, but we do have videos of him practicing this week, which is a good sign. Mike Norvell talked about it a little while ago, saying he wasn't going to be available. Things he's rehabbing in to get back better. But I just wanted to mention on there, Florida State's freshman quarterback that a lot of people are really excited for and hopefully going to see a lot more of throughout his career at Florida State, potentially going into next season. But that was a good sign to see him dressed out and practicing this week in a couple of videos I saw and that we posted on socials.
Hasn't just been this week. He's been ramping it up a little bit about since the bye week. I want to say doing a little bit more here and there as time goes on. We haven't had an official update for Mike Norvell, but when he was talking about that injury, he made it clear that Brock Limb wasn't going to be out for the remainder of the season. So, I mean, even today, watching him in 7-on-7, he had a couple of nice passes. And like I said, just continuing to ramp back up.
There we go. Well, gentlemen, how are we feeling about this game going into it? I think we were talking in the production meeting about Syracuse's defense and where Florida State can put some points on the board if they want to. If they start off like they did in that first quarter, this team is really hard to beat. I mean, Florida State putting up 22 points in that first quarter is huge. But kind of peeling off a little bit, just not wanting to push as much going in that second quarter. Penalties don't help. There was a lot of things that uncharacteristically Florida State was doing, not being strong with their discipline is what put them in that rut there to not put up some more points. But you would like to see Florida State have a strong first half and a second half. We just still haven't seen that out of this team yet. We've seen some great signs. You saw it against LSU, what they're able to do in the fourth quarter. We're able to see now this last weekend, the first quarter against Virginia Tech. You're just kind of wondering, when will we ever see, Florida State have 4 strong quarters where they're able to put away a team early on, and you're jotting out, Tate Rodemaker quite a bit earlier, seeing some more of those true freshmen that I think all of us want to see because they've shown signs in practices and some glimpses in some games. But, just going into it, gentlemen, how are we feeling and what will you be looking out for on Saturday afternoon?
I think Syracuse, they're coming in on a 2-game losing streak right now, winless in ACC play after falling to Clemson and North Carolina the past 2 weeks. Lost to the Tar Heels 40-7 on Saturday. I think they're going to come in with a little bit of chip on their shoulder. I mean, you can't afford to start 0-3 in ACC play if you're going to try and contend moving forward later into the season. They've got a veteran quarterback who this will be the 3rd straight year that Florida State has faced, Garrett Schrader. Dino Babers has extensive experience matching up against Florida State. So I think we're going to see Syracuse throw some interesting wrinkles there on offense to try and get those receivers involved. Definitely going to be trying to pound the ball and control the clock as well. But I'm also looking over at Syracuse's defense, first-year defensive coordinator Rocky Long. I mean, a legend in college football and a guy who knows how to run a defense very efficiently, is going to throw a ton of different looks out there at Florida State, bringing pressure from a variety of different areas, whether it's linebackers on the blitz, bringing in defensive backs, and then backing out of the blitz at the last second. It's going to be fun to see how Florida State handles that and how the offensive line is able to protect Jordan Travis, because Syracuse coming into this game averaging 3 sacks a game. Jordan Travis has only been sacked 5 times all season. One of those things is going to have to give on Saturday morning.
It was interesting watching their last 2 games, especially against UNC. It felt like Syracuse's defense was so concerned about Drake May running that there's just so much open right behind the linebackers. I'm like, if you're afraid of Drake May running, have fun against Jordan Travis. And hopefully Jordan Travis is seeing these routes behind the linebackers in the middle of the field. Hopefully they can get the Destin Hills and the Ja'Kai Douglases and Keon Coleman's involved across the middle of the field. There is so much space, and especially after Carolina was stretching them horizontally from the line of scrimmage first with wide receiver screens and stretch runs. And then finally just so much open up in the middle of the field. I'm like, if there's ever going to be a game where Florida State's finally attacking the middle of the field, it's going to have to be in this game.
It's like prime for Jaheim Bell to really have
Yeah.
a bounce back game, in my opinion, with the area being open for him.
That and Ja'Kai Douglas, hopefully in the slot, making a bigger impact. And, you got to think Dustin Hill is going to continue to get targets as he builds chemistry with Jordan Travis. But as you guys said, I think this is the game where Florida State, they can work that middle of the field, and they're definitely going to come out and try and establish the running game early behind this offensive line.
Mm-hmm. And stay disciplined too. Don't get out of what you were doing such a good job of from the latter half of last year and then the early parts of this year. Stay disciplined, stay smart. Don't overthink things. I think this team, something that's hurt them a little bit throughout the season, is just overthinking some plays being made, and it starts up top with Jordan Travis. Taking some easy shots is nice, and Florida State, they tried that deep ball there with Ja'Kai. I think it just showed right off the bat, his chemistry with Ja'Kai and them, a little rusty. They were able to click on quite a few plays last year, but try to get that fixed. So because Ja'Kai Douglas is a really good threat, and he's usually reliable for Jordan Travis, and that was underthrown. Those things can be fixed, but I would like to see that utilization more with Douglas. And like I said earlier, I think Bell has a chance here. To really shine in what Syracuse's defense brings on Saturdays. I'm trying to think in here too of a few players, Rodney Hill, Trey Benson, keep an eye out for a few other players as well on the defensive side. Azrae Thomas, he showed us, like you were talking about Dustin earlier in the show, big time interception. I'll also see, keep an eye out too on Conrad Hussey, how much we'll see of him, just evaluating Kevin Knowles' play and seeing if Conrad Hussey is able to jump in there more. It just seems like from the staff's perception of both young players, Dustin Hill and Conrad Hussey, those two are really taking a charge on getting more playing time and opportunities. And I would not be against seeing more of Conrad Hussey, obviously Dustin Hill as well, but seeing Conrad Hussey out there, he's shown a lot of signs of growth just off of the first day. Remember, this kid was not an early enrollee. He showed up the first day of fall camp and was making plays, and you can definitely tell he's been in the film room. He's putting himself in the right spot, and he had a lot of flashes this last Saturday. I would not be against seeing the young true freshman safety.
I've been very impressed with the trajectory that Conrad Hussey is on. We all remember he led Florida State in interceptions during the preseason, had a great showing whenever Florida State made that trek over to UNF with, I think, 3 interceptions in 2 practices. And, I mean, he's just continued to grow then. Obviously started out the season in a little bit of a smaller role, but has just continued to grow over the last couple of weeks. And we saw it with that breakout performance against Virginia Tech, where he was able to have that massive hit and force an incompletion, ended up finishing with 3 tackles, had that forced fumble at the end of the game there as well to kind of seal the deal for Florida State. So Conrad Hussey has come along, especially in a defensive backfield where there have been some consistency concerns at times, and teams have been going right at Kevin Knowles and really trying to test him. I think you've got to play Conrad Hussey more opposite of Shyheim Brown and see if these two can get some real chemistry going.
I'm looking at the linebackers because after Gadsden went down for Syracuse, they don't really have a huge receiving threat, and it's been their running back has been their most targeted guy these last couple of weeks out of the backfield. And Garrett Schrader is also capable of tucking it down and running himself. So hopefully you get a guy like Tatum Bethune back to close to 100%. Him, Kalen DeLoach, and DJ London can be playing at a high level. And if you can stop Allen and you can stop Schrader, I don't see a way this offense can really sustain drives.
And you bring up a good point, Austin. Once again, another dual threat quarterback on the schedule. Now Schrader, he's a
dual
bigger,
threat's a stretch.
He can
run.
He's a bigger dude, 6'4", 225 pounds, more in the mold of a guy like Drones last week than someone like Castellanos earlier in the season. But I mean, he's got close to 400 yards on the season. I want to say 7 touchdowns on the ground. I mean, he's definitely a threat and someone that Florida State is going to have to be aware of. Whenever they played against Syracuse last year, he was pretty limited at the time, wasn't able to do a ton with his legs, and I think that played a big factor in Florida State. I mean, just absolutely running over Syracuse 38-3, but this time around a lot healthier coming into this matchup.
Syracuse this year's one of those teams where you see the stats, you're like, Garrett Schrader's run for 400 yards and 7 touchdowns. And then you look at their last 2 games against North Carolina and Clemson. Against Clemson, Schrader had 24 yards against Clemson, and I think he had 28 against Carolina. So what are we looking at?
Is that a plane?
It's a picture of Garrett Schrader. He's a pilot. Oh. I did not know that, I guess. And it's him with this plane right here. I did not know. I was just looking at his size.
Piloting the Syracuse offense.
Yep. Yeah, fun fact of the day there for our
Syracuse is just one of those teams. Syracuse is just one of those teams where their stats are so inflated by playing Army and Purdue and 2 other teams at the beginning of the season that don't even matter. Once you watch these last 2 games against Clemson and against Carolina, it's just really not that good of a team, at least as of right now, especially without Gadsden.
They've definitely struggled in these last 2 games against Clemson and North Carolina, finished with under 300 yards of total offense in both those 2 games, only 21 total points the last 2 weeks. So, I mean, this is going to be make or break for Syracuse. They're either going to come into Tallahassee and put on a little bit of a competitive game with Florida State, or they're going to roll over and get blown out early.
I would like to see Tatum Bethune versus Garrett Schrader big hit moment. That would be a collision right there. 225, Tatum Bethune.
It's not like Schrader's been throwing well either the last couple of weeks. 124 yards last week, 181 yards against Clemson, 2 total picks. I just don't see maybe I'm wrong and maybe I'm completely jinxing the defense. I just don't see a way Syracuse can sustain drives unless they're hitting crazy explosive plays, which they started out the season doing that. Mm-hmm. But in the last 2 weeks, I think they've only got 9 or 10 total plays of 10 plus yards. Like they're just not that explosive offense that they were in the first 4 weeks.
That's what it's going to take. Syracuse on the year, 32 plays of 20 plus yards. That ranks 33rd in the country. But like you said, Austin, I mean, they've been pedestrian the last 2 weeks, playing against a lot better defenses than they did those first 4 games of the season. And I also agree with what you were saying, Austin, that some of those numbers are a little inflated with what Syracuse was able to do on offense. But at the same time, we've got to see this Florida State defense play a complete game.
For sure. And you can go back to last game of Florida State's defense and be like, oh, they're giving up big running plays, and they were hitting Virginia Tech had those explosive plays at times in the game, but they still only allowed 10 points on defense. When it came to it, they stepped up, and even those 10 points, you could argue, shouldn't have mattered if you throw in the roughing the quarterback, which, as you mentioned, was BS. If that's taken away, that they only get 3 points. So, yeah, I thought the defense overall played pretty decent. They just need to be a little bit better, and this is a good opportunity to do that against a team that's not as good running the football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, having that pass rush too, getting that clicking as it's been, would be nice to see again, and back-to-back weeks, and see that pass rush from the inside that we've seen rip through. Has been nice, but also on the outside. You see Gilbert Edmond, you're getting out of Jared Verse, Pat Payton too, who had a nice game. Florida State continuously trying to bring that defensive line pressure to Schrader will be good. And they were able to do that last year, and we'll see if they're able to do it again, and back-to-back seasons with Adam Fuller's defense. But you got to stay consistent there. That's the biggest thing.
And to that point, Schrader has been sacked 14 times already this season. That includes 2 games where he was sacked 5 times. Florida State, after getting Jared Verse going last week, you got to wonder if that defensive line is going to be able to turn their heads back and get after it once again. Jared Verse, I know we haven't really done specific practice observations talk during this episode, but I mean, he had a really good week of practice for Florida State. A lot of energy after that performance against Virginia Tech. And I mean, especially on Tuesday, there were at least 2 plays where he got through the offensive line so quick and got to the quarterback that the coaching staff just kind of ignored him and let the play continue on, because it would have been a waste of time to stop it that quickly. But Jared Verse looks like he's back and ready to stuff the stat sheet these next couple of weeks.
I mean, the defense was already getting after the quarterback last week. I know they only ended up with Versus 2 sacks, but they ended up having 15 total pressures across 9 different players. So they were getting after drones last week, and I think Schrader's just going to be another opportunity this week.
Mm-hmm. I think one thing that Jared Verse, one of his best talents is his speed, But I'm also now kind of wondering what the size added on. Like, this is going to be more of a thing after the season because he's already got the size. But, I like him a little bit more trimmed up. I've come to find out. I like him a little bit more slimmer, and I think that's something that scouts going into the combine and everything, he'll trim up definitely once he gets into the league. But he's just got the power, though, that at some point you just can't stop after rep after rep after rep for these tackles. So he's able to take advantage of. But you can just see the little bit of the lack of speed, in my opinion, from last year going into this season. So just something different than you're going to have to put another player there. I think Gilbert Edmonds more has that athleticism, and you know what you're getting out of Pat Payton. But just something I've observed watching games, and I can definitely tell and see a difference from last year. It just depends on what kind of player you want, or also what his duties are and task management, assignment management from Coach JP, and what kind of scheme they're bringing to the offense they're going against.
I do think he's been really good at timing the snap count lately. I mean, especially the sack against Virginia Tech. I mean, he was already in the backfield before the left tackle could even react. So, I mean, even if you can say maybe his speed has gone down a little bit with the added weight, I think his overall game has improved because he's just become a lot smarter, has better instinct.
More tactical and technique-wise has improved.
And I said on the instant reaction, there was one play in the first quarter where he just smoked the left tackle off the line, but it ended up being a run play. And he pointed at the left tackle. He's like, "I'm gonna get you one of these times." And he ended up getting him a few quarters later. But he's definitely worked on his get off.
Yeah. So definitely some things that he worked on during the off season, and I'm just so excited to see which team picks him up at the next level. I just think they're gonna build a serious freak athlete and prototype for a guy that's going to stick in the league for a long while. There's just so many of his kind of build, I would say, in the league, but he's just got that natural talent that I know a lot of coaches are salivating over to get him on their roster. Let's jump into score predictions to end this off. I know VZ has just a few kind of basketball notes to end us off on, but just some score predictions, though, gentlemen. I don't remember who went first last week.
I went. I'm pretty sure D was first.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Are y'all going to hold hands again?
We'll find out. I'm glad I get to go first.
I had a score in my mind already, and he sort of like, I'll just wait. I don't want to spoil anything.
Uh-oh. Seems to be working, though.
The second of 3 consecutive home games for Florida State, another sold-out contest in Doak Campbell Stadium. You've got the 1993 National Championship celebration during halftime coming for Florida State. And this is going to be a big weekend for the Seminoles. This is an overmatched Syracuse team. They've lost their best weapon on offense. I do think their defense is going to be able to make things interesting in the first half of this contest, but I expect some adjustments from Mike Norvell on offense and Florida State really to get things rolling here. I'm going to go a little bit lower scoring, but I've got Florida State winning this one pretty handily. Let's say Keon Coleman, 150 yards on Saturday, and Trey Benson has another 100-yard game. Jared Verse, give me 1.5.
All right, now you're getting too cocky after you went over last week and got one thing right. This man's over here.
He's too full
putting a wish list together.
Jordan Travis 700 yards, but anyway, I'm gonna go Florida State 37, Syracuse 17.
Wait, what was Florida State's?
Actually, Florida State 37, Syracuse 13.
Interesting.
Oh, okay, so less than last week's score prediction, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll go next, so then VZ can go last here for us. But I'm going to go Florida State. I'm kind of sticking with the same of last week, but I'm going to go Florida State 44, Syracuse 14. And I think we're going to see a little bit more of some Keziah Holmes in this one. I think we're going to get some more PT out of him. Long overdue, in my opinion, but would like to see some Keziah Holmes on Saturday. Not going to say his stat line, but I would like to see 26 out there for FSU. And 2, I'd like to see, if J-Trav needs to utilize his legs, and man, watch out for those headshots. They're coming for you. And those slides, we got to work on those slides. We got to talk. He's got to talk with his brother, Devin, and figure out those baseball slides a little bit better, maybe more of of an angle next time, not just kind of going like you're sitting in a chair, because man, you could get your head taken off. But hey, it brings in some nice flags for you and gets you a first down and more. But yeah, I think Florida State takes care of business. You got the 1993 alum in the house. It should be a fun time in Doak for a nooner, and I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be, I think it's going to be a fun game. Honestly, I think Florida State comes out ready to prove something. Like you guys are saying, I think they have a lot of energy just with the 93 champs in the house. They're going to live up to some of the legends of Florida State's past. Just watching Syracuse these last 2 weeks, unless they show something that they just haven't shown on film, I just don't see a way their offense is that successful. I'll take Florida State 44-9. Just throw out a weird score out there.
Whoa. Just playing around now, huh?
Yeah, just just gotta be a little bit different. We were too uniform last week with 41-20, and it ended up being a weird score. So just throw out some weird things every so often.
Yeah, you got to toy around a little bit. We haven't had time to have some fun like this last couple of years, so enjoy. It's nice to not stress so much. I mean, knock on wood, some crazy Miami fiasco happens in Tallahassee on Saturday, but
please God, no.
It's just very nice to be relaxing and just kind of play around with some scores. Huh?
Not on Mike Norvell's birthday week.
No, that would probably not be the best idea. That would not be the best present for Mike at all. Second youngest ACC coach. I think 33rd in the country. 33rd.
No, it was less than that. It was like 20 something. I thought it was like 22.
I don't know. And Kenny Dillingham's like number one, right? Yeah. Yeah, don't forget to take a knee, as Tom says on Facebook. Do not forget to take a knee. Hopefully Tate Rodemaker or AJ Duffy. Brock Led? Who knows? Who knows who it could be?
Someone's saying score got me alert. Has there really never been a 44-9 score? I feel like there has to have been.
I don't know. It seems pretty unique, doesn't it? I don't know.
Surely.
Yeah, because 44 is a weird score to get.
Yeah, but I feel like it's been done.
But then you got to get 9.
That's 3 field goals.
At some point, how many field goals do you want to get before you start taking some fourth down shots? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. If it's like 30. Go ahead. I'm done discussing this fake score.
There has been a 44-9. I found it.
Okay. Gotcha.
Thanks for lying to us, College Football Central.
College Football Central in the comments.
I'm gonna have to ask you to check your stats next time.
No, we gotta have a chat with you. Before we hop off of here, though, guys, VZ, just some quick little tidbits on some basketball visits that we have for Leonard Hamilton.
Just real quick. Last week, you had top 40 really prospect for 2025 come in to visit Alir Malouk out of Long Island. Very similar player to Taylor Bowen, who hosted him on the visit. I caught up with Malouk real quick this week. He said he really enjoyed the visit, and we'll see if anything goes from there. So far, it's his first visit and doesn't have anything set up otherwise for visits. Have to like where Florida State sits right now, but the big one this weekend, Carmelo Anthony and his son Keon Anthony will be on campus visiting Florida State. Obviously, it is against his dad's alum in Syracuse, but I'm told Keon's really high on Florida State, and maybe they make a good impression before he visits the Orange next week. It'll be interesting to see if Carmelo Anthony partakes in some of these photo shoots. Maybe see an NBA legend in some garnet and gold. I think that'd be pretty cool to see.
Yeah, that would be cool. Dope. And hopefully they'll be on the sideline for the game in Doak or something.
So the way it usually goes, the way it was, at least when I was there for visits, is they'd be on the field before the game, get all the pictures taken, all that sort of stuff. And then through the first quarter, they'll file up to the bleachers. And then depending on when the game is, they can either stay for the whole game. With it being a noon game, there will probably be a practice around 3:30, 4 o'clock that they'll have to get back to.
Okay. Either way, should be cool to see Carmelo Anthony on the sidelines of Doak, and he's 6'7", so we'll definitely be looking for him.
Absolutely, get your binoculars, D-Lou.
I will say binoculars.
Get your binoculars. What was I going to say? Yeah, Carmelo Anthony. I think he's great. My roommate has his jersey, everything. Big fan of him from being up there in New York. But he screwed me a lot of times in my betting. So he's like on one of those lists of my top 5 that I'll never, ever, ever, ever. Well, I won't anymore, obviously, but bet on. But he screwed me quite a bit. One of my bets, me and my best friend, we were celebrating after the first half of the game, and then he screwed me in the second half. Like he scored a 3-pointer before the buzzer at halftime. Like, oh my God, we're back, we're here, and then he ended up scoring too many in the second half. And
all I'll say about Carmelo is I started the 3 to the dome celebration before he did it, but obviously there's no proof because he was in the NBA. So
okay, gotcha.
Just is what it is.
That was back in your days at the Yard, right?
Back in my day, middle school and high school basketball.
Man, should have trademarked it. Sue him. Sue him. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Appreciate everybody hanging out here with us. As always, you listen to podcasts on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. If you're on YouTube right now, before you bounce out of here, feel free to hit that like button. We would definitely appreciate it. Much appreciated, too. A lot of new visitors, viewers, commenters in here, subscribers. So really appreciate you guys hanging out with us this season. We will be here for an instant reaction around 5 o'clock, somewhere around there. Hopefully just a little bit after the FSU game. Hopefully like 4:30.
5 o'clock.
So
game will be over at 3.
How is that an instant reaction? Like
maybe like a 3:45, 4 o'clock. Maybe.
I would
go live till 4:15. We didn't go live till 4:15.
That was your fault. I was ready.
No,
4:15. It was a 3:30 game. How'd you go live at 4:15 for a 3:30 game?
We were here for mid-game. We were giving our remarks. We're now with you not here. Being here, D-Lou.
He's talking about the last time we had a noon game, which was Boston College, right?
No, it was Clemson overtime.
I think he's trying to bring up the Boston College game.
I don't know what it is. I don't really know either. I don't know. We'll have to figure it out later. But we'll be here pretty close to after the game ending. So we'll give our thoughts, me and VZ, on Florida State versus Syracuse at noon in Doak Campbell Stadium. Hope everybody has a fun time. Another sellout, though. Another sellout. So should be a rowdy Doak Campbell Stadium.
By the way, someone said that it's going to be one of the quietest games of the afternoon because it's a noon game. I need Noles fans to make some noise.
Yeah, I don't want to grade it because I'm not there, but Dustin, get them going, man. Get Doak going. Just seem
I'll bang on the glass. I'll do my best.
Get them riled up. Throw out some Chick-fil-A to them. They'll get going.
Yeah, it is kind of tough.
Where's the Chick-fil-A coming from?
You'll find some.
He will. Yeah, I mean, it's hard for the student section to get going, man. They're hungover from after Friday night. You're going into a game, been there before. It's not the most fun, but you got to get there. You got to bounce back. You got to bounce back in these situations. So I need to see the student section. I think Norvell too. Shout out the crowd. Said he needs to have the crowd going here on Saturdays. So maybe a little shout out to the Seminole fan base to get a grip. And I also saw too that it wasn't so easy to get into the stadium, and a lot of things were screwed up. I saw a lot of complaining from the FSU fan base on social media that it was not so easy to drive to the stadium, get into the stadium. So, we're calling out to the event staff and the police department.
And no more punting stats. They don't need that on the scoreboards.
Yeah, I saw they're not putting up the right stats on the video board. We got to get a grip. What are we doing here? We got to get a grip. We got to get a grip. It's the number 4 program in the country. Wake up. We'll talk to you guys after the game on Saturday. Peace.